Hello team, my name is Joe Bassett and I am the Southern Territory SATERN Assistant Coordinator for Operations. Really that big long title just means that I do what Bill Feast tells me to do, and Bill and I had both wanted to be with you but we were unable to, so he said, Joe, do a video for them so that we can bring them up to speed on how SATERN contributed to hurricane efforts last year and also what we can look forward to in the season that is just about upon us. You may not be familiar with the Salvation Army as a church, but that is primarily what it is. In their mission statement, they say they are an evangelical part of the Universal Christian Church. Really what this means is that the Salvation Army's relief efforts, their social services, are driven by a love for God and a hand to man. The Salvation Army in the United States is separated into 4 territories. The Eastern, Southern, Central, and Western. These territories work by and large autonomously. They will cooperate with each other, but they operate on their own with some protocols that are unique to each area, and this is coordinated by a national headquarters, which really does not have authority over the other territories, but can strongly encourage them when they need to work together and cooperate. Territories are separated into divisions. I've demonstrated here the Southern Territory, where you can see that there are divisions, and sometimes the divisions are independent states such as Texas or Florida. Sometimes divisions are comprised of multiple states, such as you have with Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi. These divisions are under the authority of their territorial headquarters. For the South, territorial headquarters is in Georgia. And territorial headquarters is where you'd see scalability in the divisions working together. The Salvation Army is more than just social or disaster services organization. As I said, it's a church and it provides essential community programs. As a church, the denomination, they're called Salvationists. The local church is referred to as a corps. The pastors and clergy are called officers, keeping with that military background or that military framework under which they work. You see there I've placed the red epaulet there. You can tell Salvation Army officers, the clergy, by red epaulets on their uniforms, and the lay members, soldiers, by blue epaulets. Salvation Army staff and volunteers are not necessarily affiliated or members of the Salvation Army Church. So for myself, even though I grew up in the Salvation Army and much of my early life was in the Salvation Army as a Salvationist, I am no longer a Salvationist. I am now Baptist. Several reasons for that, but I still support as much as I can and endorse the Salvation Army's efforts. So as a volunteer, I'm not a member of the Salvation Army any longer. I will say the vast majority of SATERN members are not in the Salvation Army Church. There's a very small percentage that are, but they still support the Salvation Army's mission using ham radio and radio communications. Specifically to the Salvation Army's emergency disaster services, their primary mission is mass feeding, both fixed and mobile, and emotional and spiritual care. They do have secondary missions such as a bulk distribution of goods, disaster social services, and long-term recovery. It is a scalable response, and I'm going to go from the bottom of this slide towards the top. If there's a local event, the local corps, that local church, has control and will head the response. Divisional support may be there, or they may receive reinforcements coordinated by divisional headquarters. If it's a multi-locality event, say several counties are affected, the division will coordinate and command that. Divisional events, of course, it scales up then. The divisional headquarters will have control and command of that response with territorial support. And of course, the largest event, multi-divisional, that would be the territorial command and support, and territorial headquarters would be in charge of that response. In its mission to support the Salvation Army in that scalability, SATERN, the Salvation Army Team Emergency Radio Network, utilizes amateur radio, UHF business band, mobile broadband kits, and Starlink. We like to view ourselves as communicators who happen to use radios rather than radio operators who happen to communicate. To that end, SATERN partners with the Hurricane Watch Net, shares, and Mars. There is an international SATERN sideband net, which operates on 14.325 megahertz, which you may recognize from the Hurricane Watch Net, on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. On Saturdays, the international net is on 14.320 megahertz at 10:30 a.m. There's also a national SATERN DMR net on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Then the Southern Territory, which will have primary response responsibility post-hurricane, and I'll explain that a bit more in just a little bit. But the Southern Territory, we have a training net sideband that we've been holding on the first and third Saturday at 9:30 Central Time on 7.268. Again, you'll recognize that from the Hurricane Watch Net. But we are looking to move that to evenings as that seems to work better for most of our stations. On a fifth Saturday, say there's a month that has 5 Saturdays, we do training via Zoom. The international sideband net, they partner with the Hurricane Watch Net, and in that, they will activate whenever the Hurricane Watch Net does, and they will provide weather and storm damage reports or help relay those reports, and then they're ready for any outbound health and welfare messages. The Southern Territory SATERN is a little different in the way we operate. Now, I will say that Southern Territory SATERN is grandfathered under International SATERN. So if you're a member of Southern Territory SATERN, you are a member of SATERN at large. We follow much the same prescription that the International Net does. However, we don't officially activate until immediately after the Hurricane Watch Net secures. If we were to deploy, we would deploy with these resources to support an IMAT team. We have not implemented that deployment strategy yet, but that's the way it would look in the upcoming hurricane season. Here are some numbers from last year. Hurricane Idalia, we had 110 and a half hours for all SATERN members. And the Southern Territory, we assumed the frequency immediately after Hurricane Watch Net secured, and that is our operating procedure. That is our protocol. The Southern Territory does not activate until the Hurricane Watch Net secures, because there's not going to be much health and welfare traffic pre-landfall, but after landfall. And last season, we did implement that following landfall of Hurricane Idalia, and we were on for 4 hours. 5 SATERN stations did monitor along with us with no messages. The members that you see in these categories, that's how many members were actually monitoring along with Hurricane Watch Net. And I will say that several of us are members of the Hurricane Watch Net. You can see the numbers there for Hurricane Lee and Hurricanes Norma and Tammy. Here are some of the points of contact for SATERN. You might be interested in these. Michelle Heaver is the National SATERN Committee Chair. She's the liaison with National Headquarters. When I talked about the different territories working independently to work together, they would coordinate through Michelle Heaver and that SATERN, National SATERN Committee. Of course, in the Southern Terry, there is Bill Feast. You all know Bill well. And then myself, there is our information. The International SATERN Sideband Net, the net manager there is Dick Seeley. So in that cooperation on 14.325, Dick would be your primary point of contact. And on 7.268 as well. Dick is a member of Hurricane Watch Net, as I am as well. Once again, thank you for allowing me to join you, even if virtually. Thanks, and have a blessed day.